Natural gas plant with the capacity to power 370,000 homes. Provide a huge boost to the Morgan County economy. New Indianapolis Power and Light Company's CEO Craig Jackson is here to talk about $600 million investment and the utility's request for a rate hike. Plus, one of the nation's largest security companies has launched a $50 million corporate venture fund right here in Indiana. We'll talk with the man leading Allegion Ventures about the idea behind the fund and why now. And thousands of young entrepreneurs are getting ready to set up shop with just a few ingredients. Lemonade Day Greater Indianapolis is ready for its 9th year of providing juice to aspiring entrepreneurs, and they want you. Details on those stories and much more ahead on this edition of Inside Indiana Business.
Stand by for Top of Show with music full. Stand by D1 Sound, sponsored open with music. Stand by camera 3 with Gary. We're out in 5, 4, 3, 2, dissolve, cue Gary.
Hello and welcome to Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gary Dick. It has been some 4 years in the making, and now a $600 million natural gas plant is up and running in Morgan County. Indianapolis Power and Light's new combined cycle gas turbine plant went online late last month in Martinsville. The utility says it reduces the rate of most emissions by about 98% compared to the 6 coal-fired units it replaced. And for more on the expected impact of the new plant and a possible rate increase to cover the cost, I'm pleased to be joined by new IPL CEO Craig Jackson. And Craig, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about this investment, $600 million, one of the largest construction projects in the state of Indiana in recent years. It's in Morgan County in Martinsville. Talk about the impact you feel this plant is going to have.
Well, certainly from an environmental perspective, this is going to have a significant impact on the environment as we move from coal to natural gas. This is a tremendous accomplishment by the company, by the workers of the plant. But overall, reduction in emissions is going to be significant.
Yeah, we'll talk about also the diversification, if you will, in the mix, your energy mix, because coal lessening in that mix. How does this change the mix for IPL?
So historically, IPL has had a mix coal of about 80%. And with the completion of this project, along with the conversion of some of our other coal assets to natural gas, gas will now make up a larger percentage of the overall mix at about 45%. Coal will be around 44%, and the remainder a little bit of wind and solar.
Yeah, this is obviously a very intentional decision, strategic decision by the utility, a big investment. Why do it? Why make this decision to make this major investment?
You know, there were federal regulations several years ago around requirements for existing coal assets, and at that time, we did a review on what was the least cost alternative for our customers. And at the end of the day, the result was this combined cycle was the most economical and the obvious benefits of providing cleaner generation.
Yeah. You are requesting a rate increase with the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, an increase that would generate funds to pay for this plant. And the impact you estimate for average residential customer would be about $11.50 per month. Not everybody's happy about that. Some have expressed opposition, including some city county councilors. So your reaction?
You know, my reaction would be, as I mentioned earlier, we took a very judicious process to evaluating this investment. And it really was a low-cost, least-cost investment opportunity for our customers. And we believe will provide greater benefits from a clean energy standpoint.
As you look going forward and you look at the utility sector, the industry, it's capital-intensive industry, a lot of change going on in the regulatory environment, renewables. How do you see renewable energy really impacting the future at IPL?
As I look out longer term, you know, beyond a 5 into a 10-year period even, I do believe that renewables will become an increasingly larger part of our portfolio. We'll have to continue to see the economics play out that would allow for that type of investment, but I certainly do believe that it will continue to be and possibly even be a larger portion of our portfolio.
Yeah, I want to ask you too about a big partnership and a program with the city of Indianapolis and with LED lighting and lighting throughout the community. How's that going, that program?
It's going very well. In fact, just within the past week and a half, we kicked off that 3-year program. So the first street light was changed out from the current technology to LED. We're really excited about that, to partner with the city. I believe that's going to provide a safer and obviously provide some cost efficiencies for our residents within the city of Indianapolis.
All right, Craig Jackson is the new CEO at Indianapolis Power and Light Company. A major project is now online in Morgan County. We'll be following the story going forward. Thanks very much, Craig.
Great, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, still ahead, there's a new CEO at Indiana's Advanced Manufacturing and Logistics Initiative, Connexus, Indiana. Mark Howell is here, and he'll share his vision on why he feels advanced manufacturing is Indiana's best-kept secret. But first, Allegion has launched a $50 million corporate venture fund in Indiana to accelerate the growth of innovative technology and new products. The president of Allegion Ventures is here to talk about plans to take investment in innovation to the next level. It's time now to go inside innovation, brought to you by DMI. Well, Carmel-based Allegion Ventures is on the hunt for potential portfolio companies. A new $50 million corporate venture fund launched in March will target early-stage startups developing innovative technologies and products, in particular in the security field. Now, the man leading the fund is a recognized leader in the IoT space, Allegion Ventures President Rob Martins. And Rob, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Gary. Great to be here.
Let's talk about, first of all, for folks who don't know about Allegion, the company has a substantial presence here, a spin-out really from a familiar name, Ingersoll Rand.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2013, Allegion was formed, as you said, spinning out from Ingersoll Rand, and our America's headquarters is actually in Carmel. Yeah. We're a $2.5 billion security and safety company. We have about 10,000 employees globally serving customers in over 30 countries.
Yeah, and a major presence, as you say, right here in central Indiana. Let's talk about this corporate venture fund, a $50 million fund. That is a significant commitment and has the potential to be very positive. I mean, you could be looking for investment all over the world, really, but could be very advantageous for Indiana.
No, absolutely, and we think Indiana, especially the central Indiana area, is really a hotbed for technology right now. You know, thanks to organizations like TechPoint, Mike Langolier, especially what we've seen from the High Alpha team, Eric Tobias, Mike Fitzgerald, Christian Anderson, and Scott. Incredible energy and a lot of things going on, and you take that and add along the IoT lab that Mayor Fadness and John Wexler have gotten out there, and it's just a crucible for great things to happen.
All right, let's talk about the fund and the kinds of investment you're going to be looking for.
Sure, so it's a very targeted fund. This is actually the brainchild of our CEO and chairman, Dave Petraeus. Historically, corporate venture funds have been a little heavy, maybe a little bureaucratic, onerous for an entrepreneur or small business. Our idea was to be lightweight, and regardless of what stage you might be in terms of talking with us, really want to add value to you, whether it's sharing a special skill that we have in manufacturing, making connections for you, or the like. Fundamentally, our focus is on people and asset flow, and identifying emerging technologies that can help us tell a better narrative around security and safety.
And you really want, as we were talking off camera, you really want this to be a different kind of fund, right?
Absolutely. We're very interested in investing in companies where we can share our core expertise. We think there's a lot of capital out there. If you look, you'll find the capital. But what's more important is the collaboration and the partnership, and from our standpoint, the discovery. There's a lot of ways that Allegion can work with you. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the form of a capital infusion, although, if you need that and it's a great fit, we can do it.
Yeah, from a timeline standpoint, I think you launched the fund in March. What do you look at in terms of your first investments?
So so our pipeline is very robust. So we've had well over 50 companies that we've had conversations with. Some of those have been local. And obviously, Allegion's a global company, so a great blend. And I will tell you that Central Indiana has some very competitive technology and very competitive entrepreneurs.
Very good. We'll be following the story, to be sure. A $50 million corporate venture fund, Allegion Ventures. Rob Martins, thanks very much. We'll no doubt talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Well, here's what's on tap now in tech news, served up by Sun King. Governor Eric Holcomb has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Israel Innovation Authority focused on ag biosciences, life sciences, and cybersecurity. The governor says the agreement, signed as part of his economic development trip to Israel, could lead to academic exchanges, mutual investment, and cross-collaboration. Indianapolis-based tech company Greenlight Guru is continuing its rapid growth. The company, which produces quality management software for the medical device sector, has launched the latest version of its platform with plans to add about 14 jobs over the next quarter. A recent study by the Purdue Center for Regional Development shows the 5-county region of the Southern Indiana Economic Development Commission is lacking in broadband access. The research, which involved Davies, Greene, Knox, Lawrence, and Martin counties, suggests more than 20% of residents and 50% of businesses in that region do not have access to broadband. And for Tech News 24/7, be sure to check out InsideIndianaBusiness.com. Well, still ahead, Lemonade Day. Indianapolis is on a mission to help youngsters become entrepreneurs, social advocates, and forward-thinking citizens of tomorrow. One lemonade stand at a time. Scott Jones and the director of the program will be here to talk about its lasting impact. But next, he went from serving on the board to becoming CEO of Conexus Indiana. Why Mark Howell believes Indiana's manufacturing and logistics sectors are fully equipped to be at the forefront of artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. Here's what's making news now around Indiana, brought to you by your Indiana Pacers. Well, the first 2018 Subaru Ascent rolled off the assembly line this week at Subaru of Indiana Automotive in Lafayette. The new production sparked a $140 million investment at that plant, along with plans to create up to 200 jobs. Iowa-based Winnebago Industries has broken ground on a more than $12 million expansion project in Middlebury. The company adding 200,000 square feet of space at its Winnebago Towables campus, with plans to add up to 125 jobs this year. And Purdue University expecting an incoming freshman class of 8,300, which would be the largest in school history. The university says the record total largely fueled by an increase in out-of-state students. And Ruth's Chris Steakhouse has cut the ribbon on its new location in downtown Fort Wayne. The $6 million restaurant, part of the $40 million Skyline Tower project in the city's emerging downtown business district. Well, the state's Advanced Manufacturing and Logistics Initiative has a new leader. Former Angie's List Chief Operating Officer Mark Howell began his new role at the beginning of the year and is here now to talk about his vision, including how these two important industries can be at the forefront of emerging technologies in Indiana. And Mark, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for shining a spotlight on Conexus.
Well, and Conexus, as mentioned, advanced manufacturing and logistics, two extremely important industries for the state of Indiana. But first about you, I mentioned your role at Angie's List. Prior to that, Brightpoint, Odessa, you've got a big corporate background. Why take on this new role as CEO of Conexus?
Yeah, well, for me, I have been benefiting from the work of others in my 25-year career. And because it was a kind of a natural inflection point, I think this was a chance for me to maybe move to the other side of the desk and begin giving back in a way that I've been receiving from.
Well, Conexus really is an initiative focused on these two important sectors, advanced manufacturing, distribution, and logistics. As you look at the opportunities, I mean, you could probably talk for an hour, but kind of zero in on where you see greatest opportunities for Indiana in those two sectors.
Yeah, I think in many ways, advanced manufacturing and logistics in Indiana is one of our best kept secrets. If you think about those industries, account for more than 20% of our workforce and more than 30% of our GDP. So they're certainly worthy of our attention. Maybe three big areas that we're focused on. The first would be workforce, and around workforce, very interested in economic mobility. and giving people the opportunity to move from lower paying jobs into jobs that provide career pathways. We want to build the brand of advanced manufacturing, help people understand its impact and understand the opportunities that it creates. And we're also focused on how we're going to leverage technologies to maintain our competitiveness, our operating efficiencies, and sustainable growth in the current workforce environment.
Yeah, you mentioned workforce. Is talent, in your view, the biggest challenge, the biggest risk going forward?
Well, it's certainly the issue that's getting the most attention right now. And although that's a big challenge, I think it's also creating opportunities, because we're seeing a level of innovation in terms of training programs, work-based learning, and interactions between industry and education that we haven't seen historically, that's being driven out by that. I also think it's leading to greater innovation on the technology side, because in order to maintain the level of productivity and growth and quality necessary, it's going to take investments in technology to, in many ways, supplement what's happening on the workforce side.
Yeah, so, and you think, as we were talking off camera, that these emerging technologies, artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things and the new IoT lab up in Fishers can play a role.
Absolutely, and it's not just the technologies that are being created, but it's also how those technologies are being used in the actual manufacturing process. One of the things that I've gained a much greater appreciation on is we move into areas of electrification, connected vehicles, and autonomy. The gating issue for those in many ways is cybersecurity, and that's kind of not necessarily intuitive, but there's ancillary technology implications that we've got to stay on top of.
All right, Mark Howell is the new CEO at Connexus Indiana. Mark, thanks for sharing that perspective. I know we'll have you on many times in the future. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, coming up next, since 2010, Lemonade Day Greater Indianapolis has worked to empower today's youth to become tomorrow's entrepreneurs. Hundreds of youngsters getting their stands and lemonade ready for next Saturday. Organizers are here to explain how entrepreneurial activities now could help them later in life. Well, thousands of lemonade stands will go up next weekend throughout central Indiana. The 9th annual Lemonade Day Greater Indianapolis will once again teach kids how to start, own, and operate their own businesses. And for more on this very popular event and the importance of early entrepreneurial engagement, let's turn now to Lemonade Day Greater Indianapolis founder Scott Jones and City Director Kendria Williams. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, Gary.
Scott, I want to talk to you about it first. It kind of tee this conversation up. Lemonade Day has become such a popular annual event. How did it all start?
Well, this is the 9th year.
Right.
So we had 8 Lemonade Days before, and we've had over 75,000 children who have been touched by this in very big ways. And you think about this, these kids, you know, they'll ask for birthday presents, Christmas presents, but here we teach them over a few months the skills that they need to go build a stand, figure out how to make lemonade, set up on the street corner or in front of the bookstore or the grocery store, or Kroger's or whatever, or on the canal, find the traffic, advertise, you know, become great salespeople, you know, on that day. And you watch them transform, you know, from kids who really have to ask for things to kids who control their own destiny, know for the rest of their lives that they can control their own destiny by making their own money and buying that bicycle or whatever it is they wanted, or giving to charity or putting something in the bank. I mean, it's really cool to watch this.
Yeah, and it really is the simple form of a lemonade stand, but with some, as you mentioned, some real business principles that they get exposed to.
Teaching financial management, we're teaching entrepreneurship, we're teaching cooking.
All kinds of stuff, yes.
Recipe development.
Kendria, talk about this year, as Scott said, the 9th year, and it continues to grow in multiple ways, including partnerships. You're even adding an extra day this year as well.
And so we're excited to add another day to Lemonade Day this year. So we have May 19th and then June 23rd. And we did that primarily because the kids put so much work into these lemonade stands that we needed to expand it to another day just to provide them with another opportunity to act as an entrepreneur.
And the partnerships you've also put together with the Indiana Fever, Geist Half Marathon. How are those partnerships going to take shape?
Oh, those are awesome partnerships. We have partnered with Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Geist, and the Fever, and they're allowing us
stands in all those locations.
Yeah, they're allowing us to put public stands in those public places where there are a lot of traffic on those days. And so those kids that will be in those locations, you know, hopefully they'll be able to sell a lot of lemonade, raise a lot of money, and donate a lot of money to charity, plus save some, right?
That's right. Gary, you gotta ask her. She knows the stories of some of these kids that have been doing this program and what's going on with them.
Yeah, exactly. And we were talking off camera, fascinating stories.
Okay, so first off, I definitely have to bring attention to C.J. Harris. He was recently voted the GoFundMe Kid Hero because of his work with Lemonade Day. Nationally. Wow. So he does a lot of donations of his profits back to the Asthma and Allergy Association. And then we had Lily. Unfortunately, Lily retired last year from Lemonade Day, but she retired with a good record because she raised $26,000 over the course of her participation that she donated back to pediatric cancer research.
That's amazing.
And so these kids are doing some really impactful things with their lemonade stands here.
Two great stories. Scott, we only have 15 seconds, but the impact obviously is real.
You know, you look at the impact over the years to come as these kids go out into our community and give back, right, and do things on their own and become entrepreneurs that create the big, tall buildings in the middle of Indianapolis.
Very good. Lemonade Day 2018 next weekend here in Indianapolis. Scott Jones, Kendria Williams, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, coming up, a new group forming to help medical professionals innovate in the business of health. The co-founders of a new chapter forming here in Central Indiana will tell us why healthcare is a hotbed here. Stay with us.
Stand by D1 Sound, sponsored open with music. Stand by camera 3 with Gary. We're out in 5, 4, 3, 2, dissolve, cue Gary.
It's time now for the Business of Health, brought to you by Hendricks Regional Health. Well, a new group is fanning the flame of entrepreneurial doctors. The Society of Physician Entrepreneurs is a national nonprofit, and a Hoosier doctor and university professor are launching an Indiana chapter. Kylie Valletta has more in the Business of Health. Kylie?
Thank you, Gary. The co-founders of SOAP Indiana say healthcare is a hotbed of potential entrepreneurs, but many medical professionals lack the business expertise to move their ideas to the marketplace. The newly formed nonprofit aims to give them the tools they need to begin a business. Dr. Todd Saxton, an IU Kelley School of Business Associate Professor of Strategy and Entrepreneurship, and Dr. Paul Zotek, a hernia surgeon, are the co-founders of SOAP Indiana. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
So let's start with you, Paul, because you have an interesting story. In addition to your day job as a surgeon, you also tried to start your own venture.
Sure. It began in 2014 with the advent of Google Glass. I was one of the early explorers and saw a potential need for training other physicians with that, and tried to start my business with a partner, and had really no team, had no strategy. We just put some startup seed money in, and it failed miserably. So at that point I realized that I needed to do something else to not only supply my own entrepreneurial spirit, but and educate myself, but also to help all the other physicians out there. I think we have an excellent idea and hands-on of what patients need us to take from the bench to the bedside, but we don't have the vehicle to get it there. And so as I took on the physician MBA at the Kelley School of Business, I met Todd, and we began to work towards a group such as SOAP that can provide the infrastructure and the ecosystem to get physicians that learning experience to provide that bench to bedside conversion.
And you mentioned the physician MBA program, which you teach for. So yes. Tell us, as you teach these doctors, what do you observe?
One of the more interesting things, which I'm not sure we as patients are aware of, is that I think physicians are every bit as frustrated with the healthcare system as we are, and are really looking to change it. You had focused a bit on starting a new business, but I kind of see a couple different categories of folks in our program, and I've gotten a much deeper sense of what their journey looks like as clinicians trying to innovate. And some of them, like Paul, are trying to start a new business or spin something out of their existing practice or network, but many of them are just looking to try and be change agents within their own organization. And many of the same skills and tools are needed to be able to push through innovation internally, as well as launch a new venture venture and raise interest, advocacy, get feedback, and then fund it. So I think there's kind of a common interest and passion for changing healthcare for the better, whether that manifests in a new venture, a new product idea, or an innovation within an existing system. And hopefully we're providing some of the tools to allow them to do that within Kelly. I think there's an opportunity through SOAP to have a much broader impact on the healthcare community in Indiana. There are a lot of physicians out there that maybe for whatever reason aren't able to take the time and energy to get the whole MBA, but at least SOAP can help them build that toolkit.
Well, let's talk about some of those tools, the function of SOAP. What are you going to do to help doctors overcome some of these hurdles to launching their own company or innovating?
Sure. Well, I'll start. As you heard from Paul's story, initially entrepreneurs, and this is true in healthcare, outside of healthcare, engineers, whatever, tend to focus on the problem or the product, I should say, or the technology that they are developing, and don't really understand necessarily the full context of the customer experience, but also aren't connected to the funding sources and other pieces that can help them be successful. So I tend to think of it in terms of kind of degree of separation. Everybody with an idea is 3 or 4 at least degrees of separation from the people they need to connect to be successful. I think if SOAP as an organization can bring those pieces together in a little better fashion to shorten those degrees of separation from 3 or 4 to 1 or 2 degrees, you can more easily connect to the people to give you feedback, again, connect you possibly to dollars and a deep understanding of the customer problem that can allow you to launch and grow your venture more successfully.
And Paul, we have just a few seconds left, but we want to make sure we mention this isn't just for doctors.
Correct. We're interested in all healthcare providers or anybody in the healthcare field to join the group and participate. We appreciate all comers, and I think the name says physicians, but we're really interested in all healthcare providers.
Well, Paul and Todd, thank you both for being here today. And I know you're just getting off the ground, but hopefully we'll have some new entrepreneurs soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Gary, back to you.
All right, Kylie, thank you. Well, Purdue University is the only institution in Indiana to be granted a National Innovation Corps, or I-Corps program. The goal is to provide commercialization and entrepreneurship guidance for technologies throughout the state, not just at Purdue. Leading the program is Purdue and Midwest NSF I-Corps Director Matthew Lionel. And Matthew, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Let's talk about this, the I-Corps program. National Science Foundation, it's one of their important programs. What's it all about?
So I-Corps, or Innovation Corps, was an initiative that the NSF, National Science Foundation, launched about 2011. And the original intent was to help recipients of NSF research grants figure out the commercial potential and path to commercialization for the technologies coming from their research before investing in significant time in prototype development or forming a company or trying to commercialize it and then finding out that nobody really wants their stuff.
Yeah, and so Purdue applied for and is now a part of this program. So there's a program at Purdue and here in Indiana. Then you're Purdue also part of a broader Midwest initiative with other universities like I think like Illinois and Michigan and others.
Yes, so that's what we call the Midwest I-Corps node, and so along with Michigan, Illinois, and also Toledo. So we support the I-Corps program in the Midwest, and our role is to principally host and instruct the national I-Corps program, which is a 7-week program. It's based on the Lean Launchpad course that's taught by Steve Blank out at Stanford University, where the teams of researchers and industry mentor go out of the lab, out of the building, out of the university, and talk to potential customers, stakeholders, to test whether the assumptions about the commercial potential of their technology are really real.
And a lot of people watching this interview understand the challenges, the hurdles, the complexities of commercialization and making that happen. But talk about, if you will, this whole commercialization issue, because Indiana is really trying to put a focus on that and really getting more of these products to market. What are some of the challenges that the entrepreneurs face?
Well, the biggest challenge for a startup and also for companies that work with the federal agencies with the Small Business Innovation Research grant is it's seldom the technology. We're good at solving. We got the science, we got the engineering to solve the technical problem. It's lack of customers, and lack of customers because they're building something no one cares about, or not enough people care about. And so where I-Corps addresses that is, before you move forward with a particular technology, you validate that indeed there is a customer. They do have a problem or a need that you can address, and your solution is going to deliver value to that. So as you move forward, you can worry more about the technology than you can about finding the customers.
Give us, if you would, an example of maybe a team that's gone through the program and the impact.
Sure. So one of our recent ones is we had a team from our College of Engineering, led by one of my colleagues, Professor Na Lu, and her PhD student, Yining Feng. They had thermoelectric technology, so converting heat to electricity that very efficient, are able to operate very high temperatures and non-toxic materials. And so their hypothesis was that they could use this for heat harvesting in high temperature industrial processes, power plants, and so on. But when they actually went out and talked to these people, they found that they're actually doing a pretty good job of recycling waste heat. But what they did find is that there is a real need for thermoelectric powered sensors to monitor underground, underwater, remote pipelines that are moving fluid, gas, steam. And if you've got a pipeline 3,000 feet below sea level, it's kind of expensive to change the battery every 6 months. And so if you can thermoelectric power those, so now they're, rather than focusing just on the material, which they found no one really wants, is connecting these with nanoscale sensors and communication devices. So they're moving ahead. They'll be forming a company, and they wouldn't have found that if they hadn't got out of the building and talked to people.
All right. Matthew Lionel is the director of the Purdue and Midwest NSF I-Corps program, really making a difference on a number of levels. Matthew, we look forward to following the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's tell ahead. Our insiders will sound off on some of the week's top stories. But first, the Colts have made some big plays off the field by strengthening its team, but also in the front office as well. Bill Benner has more coming up next. Well, it's certainly not business as it has been at the Indianapolis Colts West 56th Street headquarters, as the team is trying to beef up its roster on the field and off the field as well. Bill Benner has more on this week's Inside Indiana Sports. Bill?
Gary, thanks. As General Manager Chris Ballard reworks the Colts playing and coaching roster, the team's front office is doing the same. Earlier this year, the Colts added Roger Vandersnick as their Chief Sales and Marketing Officer, and last October they added Steve Campbell, a former deputy mayor under Bart Peterson, as Vice President of Communications. And Steve is with us today to discuss not just his new role, but communications and marketing strategies for the Colts. And Steve, welcome. You're a very familiar face in this market, so happy to have you on board.
Thanks for having us.
Talk about what led you to this position with Indianapolis Colts. Politics and sports, right? It's all about wins and losses.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's a funny thing. Someone mentioned to me the other day, they said, how different is this between your old job and working in government and public service? And I said, they're very, very similar because, any day of the week, someone can walk up on the street and tell you how you're doing. And you're also dealing with the same constituency. So I worked a lot with the Colts when I was working with Mayor Peterson. That's when we built Lucas Oil Stadium, or at least had the process to pass it and build Lucas Oil Stadium. And that's how I first became acquainted with all the folks over at the Colts. And I stayed in touch with them over the years with various folks. And then this opportunity came up, and Pete Ward, our COO, called me and said, would you be interested in talking about a position? And I said, absolutely. As a lifelong Indianapolis resident, Colts fan, season ticket member, all three of those things, I was thrilled to get the call.
And Roger added as well, again, so Colts emphasizing some areas that perhaps they haven't in the past.
Yeah, sure. We started the same day, actually. Roger Vandersnick, who came from the racing world, and he had several other jobs as well, but he's a Hoosier native and most recently came from racing. And he and I started the same day. He's our Chief Sales and Marketing Officer, and so yeah, we're revamping a lot of things on the business side of the organization. Of course, football, is going through a great transformation right now as well. But on the business side, we're trying to beef up our marketing team and our sales team to make sure that we're getting the product out there.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the things that are going on with the NFL. The NFL was always like Teflon; nothing could stick to it.
Sure.
But now they've got the safety issues. We've had the players dealing for national anthems, and I know the Colts try to stay above all that stuff, but still, you're part of the league.
Yeah, we're part of the league, and those are tough issues. The anthem issue, of course, is a very divisive issue, and that was a tough one because there were people who we cared about on both sides of that argument, and that's always a tough position to be. Mr. Irsay actually talked to the players last year and wanted to be very proactive about what our players were doing in our community. So that's one positive benefit that we've seen. Of course, it was a very divisive period in time, but our players took that and said, we actually want to make real change in our community. So they've doubled down on their efforts to go out and serve the community and do a lot of things that benefit education and hunger relief and things that are barriers to opportunity in our community.
As we wrap up, Steve, Andrew Luck, and there was some people who forwarded the perception last year that Jim Irsay overstated his possibility of his return, but still, you got to win games.
Sure.
We both know it's a bottom line business. Andrew Luck, you got to get past that. How do you convince fans that this is still a product that worth supporting?
Yeah, Chris Ballard has said this on several occasions, but because we get questions about Andrew Luck all the time. I was at a scholarship breakfast yesterday morning that had nothing to do with sports, and of course Andrew Luck came up. So what Chris has said is that until Andrew is on the field, until people see him throw a ball, until they see that he's okay and can take a hit on the field, there are going to be questions, and that's natural. That's natural. I mean, he's been out for a while now, and so it's natural for fans and for other folks to ask those questions. But until he's out on the field, we'll get those questions. But the good news is all signs are pointing in the right direction, and everybody is extremely optimistic.
And you will be 100% for opening day. Is that correct? Can we confirm
I'm going to be 100% for opening day. I hope so at least.
Steve Campbell, thanks for being on board. Gary, back to you.
All right, Bill, thank you. Well, speaking of new strategies, this week the Indie Chamber, along with UK-based Sound Diplomacy, hosted the first ever Music Cities Forum in the U.S. The goal? To develop a music strategy for Indianapolis. Inside Indiana business reporter Mary Rachel Redmond was there and has details.
Local civic and creative stakeholders spent a full day this week with influential leaders from other cities exploring a single question: what makes a music city?
The music industry is changing, and you're seeing definitely a widening of the market and in the variety of music that you can access, including in a city like Indianapolis. And that's all really exciting because music impacts a city like few other things.
After spending 20 years working in the Indianapolis music scene, Josh Baker, president and founder of both the Hi-Fi in Fountain Square and MOKB Presents, decided it was time for Indy to elevate its music status. Baker began talks with Sound Diplomacy in October, and just 6 weeks ago, the London-based firm agreed to help Indiana harness its music potential, using data-driven methodology to develop a long-term strategy.
A study that basically determines what music's impact is on a city. And that's done through various channels of data, research, surveys, interviews with people, and it takes a while. It's a 6 months to a year endeavor to really get the full study done. But when it's done, we have that data that we really need to kind of move forward to understand what is music's role in Indianapolis, and then how can we make that flourish.
So why is music so important to Indianapolis? According to Sound Diplomacy CEO Shane Shapiro, he says it all has to do with competing for things like Amazon. Even more importantly, competing for and retaining young talent.
In order to do that, you need to have a good quality of life. You need to have an evening and nighttime economy. You need to recognize your arts and cultural scene and provide pathways for communities to access them. Music is our universal language. Music is the one thing everyone speaks.
Music is a huge component for economic development. I mean, there is a definite tie to the attraction of more business and more jobs.
Think about music as an ecosystem, as an economy. You need to think about what you're planting, where you're planting it. Then we can understand what to do, where to do it, and allow music businesses to work with other businesses. And I would say have a new offer to communicate Indianapolis to the world.
And perhaps the biggest takeaway from the first U.S. Music Cities Forum, at least for this Hoosier.
We don't want to be like any other city. So, well, what can we do to be more like Nashville? What can we do to be more like Austin? We don't want to do that. We want to be like Indianapolis. We have our own culture, we have our own history, we have our own heritage, and that's important to us.
Mary Rachel Redmond, Inside Indiana Business.
All right, Mary Rachel, thank you. Well, coming up, our insiders are getting warmed up to sound off on the winners and losers of the midterm primaries, the state's next level jobs initiative, Lilly with a big acquisition, and a lot more. There they are in our Inside Indiana Business social media lounge. They will join me in studio next. Well, each week, a group of insiders joins me to offer perspective on some of the week's top stories. This week, sounding off on Southern Indiana businessman Mike Braun winning the GOP Senate primary. IPL's big $600 million natural gas plant is online. They're also looking for a rate hike, and some disturbing news on internet access in Indiana. Our insiders this week are Genovis executive managing partner Larry Gigerich, also education expert Robert Herzog, and Beck Communications President Laura Beck. And welcome one and all to the Insiders.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will start actually with the story that broke later in the week. Eli Lilly and Company making news with a major acquisition, $1.6 billion acquisition of a California company. Larry, as you look at that deal, again, a big deal, and kind of keeping in line with Lilly looking strategically at opportunities to partner, collaborate, or in this case, acquire.
Yeah, I think, in the world we live in today, you either have to look at how you can build something and how quickly you can do it and for what cost, or you go out and buy it to move yourself forward very quickly. And I think, as we were talking earlier off camera, it's a big acquisition for them. They paid a pretty significant premium, but for them, it's a good move, especially when you look at how they're positioned with other competitors.
Yeah, I think they're behind a little bit in the immunotherapy, and this is a recognition that they got to catch up to speed. So what I know of them, and just reading literally since it was announced, they've got a good management team. I think the product line is really superior there. So hopefully in the long term it pays off. But the street seemed to have pretty positive before we went on. Lilly stock was still up, I think, nearly 2%. So looks to be the right move. They're catching up fast. And certainly key will be these product launches. Dave Ricks told me a couple of weeks ago they've had 9 launches since late 2014, 6 more in the pipeline. So we'll see how that rolls. All right, Laura, the election. Are you rested up after the?
It's over. I think everyone needed a break after the barrage of advertisements.
Yeah, and the headline obviously is the GOP Senate race. Right. Mike Braun spent a lot of money. You saw him on TV. Obviously, a lot, and it paid off.
It did pay off. I think one of the things that Braun was able to do really effectively is that he was able to really chart a path between 2 long-standing establishment Republicans, even though Todd Rokita probably doesn't consider himself to be part of the establishment. But he was able really to cut a path there, and he was really able to speak to that Trump voter, those are the folks that came out during the primary. You tend to go in that direction in a primary. So I think what will come out of this is we'll see how much bad blood is left. I don't know how they're going to all come together. They'll ultimately have to. But on the other side, the Democrats stand pretty united. Senator Donnelly has a pretty strong bipartisan record at this point in time, and he's out there with the message that I'm the hired help, I don't work for anybody. And so I think that he's coming out of the gate strong, but it still is going to be a tough race.
Who do you think's the favorite?
I think Donnelly's the favorite based on the fact that he has had a good 6 years to prove himself. Sometimes Democrats are mad at him, sometimes Republicans are mad at him, and I think that means he's doing a good job.
Yeah, gotcha. Also big news this week, or actually within the last several weeks, IPL has christened its major new $600 million natural gas plant in Martinsville, Morgan County. It's a project that's been about 4 years in the making, diversifies their energy portfolio, lessens the dependence on coal-fired generation. Larry, as you look at this, a big part now is paying for it, and they're going after a rate increase, which would increase bills, I think, on average for a residential customer about $11.50 a month.
Well, I think clearly this new plant coming online is a very helpful thing to them as a business, and it does create a diversified portfolio in how they generate their energy, and from an environmental perspective, it's a very positive thing. The rate hike request I would be shocked if it's approved at the level it's asked, especially given how many they've requested in a short period of time. But yes, I mean, clearly they have to have a way to pay for this and some other projects that they also have coming in the pipeline that they need to address.
Yeah, I want to get to a couple of developments in downtowns, because if you look around, Robert, around Indiana, downtowns are really beginning to come back in a number of areas. Let's go to Evansville with the new IU Med Center down there. Actually, several universities involved. $15 million gift to name it the Stone Family Center for Health Sciences. It's going to be a key part of revitalization in Evansville.
You know, it brings together so many things: healthcare, education, regionalization, downtown, which we talked a little bit about before. It's great to see for Evansville. There's other pockets of that's happening around the country. And I think it shows, you know, for us, as we talked about this earlier, the level of leadership that are in those cities, not only in the executive branch, but those city councils that know that, hey, we have to improve. We have to create the kind of space that people are going to want to not only make a living, but it be beneficial for, you know, investors to be able to get there. So it's really, really a good sign. I can't wait to get down to Evansville and see this.
Well, and the significant investment in downtown Fort Wayne has led to a number of things, including christening this week, or opening this week, a Ruth's Chris. I think Fort Wayne may be the smallest, or certainly one of the smallest markets in the country with a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
Well, and this goes to show the level of leadership at the mayoral level. I mean, Mayor Tom Henry has been doing a terrific job there. But then when you also look at the Regional Economic Development Corporation up there too, they are all really working very closely together, and that growth is spilling over into other parts of the town. So you're seeing some new developments in Southeast Fort Wayne, which has had some has been historically underserved. So you're really seeing that, and then the other regions and the other towns around there are really starting to capitalize on it too.
Yeah, Northeast Indiana, the partnership there has really had a focus on talent and jobs, and really, I think, been kind of a leading effort in that regard. Governor Holcomb touting the early numbers on the Next Level Jobs initiative, Larry, including increasing funding for that initiative. As you look at that, and there are a lot of areas of the whole workforce thing that need to be addressed. Your take?
Well, we have a lot of work to do in town across the board. And as we look at our state, you know, that was one of the biggest challenges we have, whether it's educational attainment, adults in the workforce with credentials or certifications. It's a huge issue for us. The Next Level program is off to a good start. I think the fact that they are doubling the amount of grant dollars that are available per individual going through training and at a company level are very important, but there's a lot more to do, and I think it'll be very interesting to see what he puts in front of the legislature in this budget session that starts in January to address that issue.
Yeah. Tourism, the state is putting a lot of focus on that sector. Also, individual areas, southern Indiana, south central Indiana, really putting a lot of effort in. We saw news this week from Johnson County, 2017, $255 million economic impact in the county. So, so tourism has kind of quietly become this really big industry.
It is, and what you're also seeing too is visitors to Indiana spend $12.2 billion a year in Indiana, according to the state. And you're also seeing towns and communities, just like as we were talking about with Fort Wayne, really expanding on that. And so they're able to offer unique dining and tourism opportunities that are really bringing people in and really increasing that investment. It's exciting, I think, for us as a state to see that happening right now.
Hate to end kind of on a down note, but there was a study, I think it's important. It's a 5-county study, southern Indiana, Knox, Lawrence, Davies, Greene County, Martin County. Internet access was really bad. More than 20% of residents and 50% of businesses in that region don't have access.
Yeah, it's, you know, this is one we all have to do better. I mean, it has to be at the level of infrastructure. When we talk roads and bridges, that's where it has to be. And in Indiana, you know, education levels, median income, broadband, it just goes right in hand. We've got to find a way to address this with investment. And I know it's difficult at the State House and regionally to do that, but it just has to become that level of priority.
Yeah, talent and infrastructure are the building blocks for a successful economy, and we have a lot of work to do in both those areas.
And they shouldn't be difficult conversations.
Right.
They really shouldn't be. And so I think when you go to the polls and when you vote, these are things that you should be voting on as well.
Very good. Laura Beck, Larry Gigerich, Robert Herzog. Thanks one and all. We'll be right back after this. Coming up next week, Inside Indiana Business hits the road for our very first town hall of 2018. We visit a young but vibrant and growing city in Fishers. Tune in for that next week. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gary Dick. Go out and make it a successful week.
Inside Indiana Business with Gary Dick is a production of Grow Indiana Media Ventures with support from WFYI Productions.